Let's now bring in Chad Thomas from the IRS Forensic Investigations for more on the story. He joins us now via our video link. Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for your time this evening here in SABC News. Let's start off here. What is your reaction to the takedown operation by the Hawks? I mean, a number of officials have been involved in this alleged fraud. What do you make of the alleged fraud, which was supposed to benefit schools in Mpumalanga, but it seemed as if nothing of that sort happened?
Hi, Mbali, and good afternoon to the viewers. I think Major General Nico Gerber summarized it when he mentioned the fact that there was large-scale money laundering as well as organized crime. And he spoke about the relationships between people both in the private sector as well as people that were in the Department of Education. And we always speak to the symbiotic relationship between bad actors in the public sector and bad actors in the private sector. One must understand that the large-scale pillaging of the public purse cannot happen without people within government working with people in the private sector. And this is a classic example of what's been playing out in our country for a very long time. The greatest concern we have, and that's despite the success, and well done to General Gerber and his members for the success, but the greatest concern we have is that this dates back to 2019. So it's 7 years ago, and we're now seeing arrests. A lot of the assets would have disappeared. They wouldn't have the same value if they purchased vehicles. A lot of the money would have been gone. There's going to be a lack of clawback when it comes to trying to recover a lot of that money, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking at financial restitution and restorative justice so that money can be used for the intended purpose. But that being said, we're going to have to see a lot more of these types of successful operations replicated around the country, where the Hawks are dismantling and disrupting these syndicates, because these are syndicates. And as the General pointed out, it wouldn't have happened if there wasn't collaboration between these bad actors from the public sector together with these tenderpreneurs in the private sector.
And Mr. Thomas, maybe take us through what fraud looks like in the department. I mean, we heard there from the Hawks official saying that this was an emergency fund and this was meant to benefit schools from an emergency point of view. What does it look like when, like you're saying, it's the private sector and government sector working hand in hand to simply defraud the department here?
So being emergency repairs for 21 schools meant it didn't have to follow the normal tender process. These bids would have been received on a basis that it would have been a closed bid. It would have been given to certain companies or individuals that appeared on the database, and they would have been handpicked by the people within government that wanted to give these tenders to individuals or companies that they would then get something back from. So they created a situation where tenders would be granted on an emergency basis without going through the bid and the adjudication process. We see this playing out throughout South Africa. We see where municipalities and bad actors within those municipalities allow for the maintenance not to occur or the destruction of critical infrastructure, so that people that are close to them can be appointed to either repair that critical infrastructure or to provide generators in the case of electricity, or to provide water tankers in the case of water. We've seen it with the construction of clinics, schools, roads, RDP houses, where there are people who are favored in the allocation of these emergency contracts so that there can be a sharing of the tax money that would have been used for the improvement of people's lives and service delivery. This is not just a fraud, it's a massive act of corruption. There's also forgery and uttery involved because of the documents that would have been submitted, and of course the very important offense of money laundering. If they can bring all of that together, and with all these different parties, they can actually charge them with a very serious poker offense of racketeering.
And Mr. Thomas, when you're looking at this type of corruption, crime and fraud taking place, particularly in government departments, how prevalent has that become in South Africa?
Very prevalent, and that's a very sad and unfortunate part. And it goes all the way back to December 1999 when the arms deal was signed into place. A lot of those companies, when one looks at Thales, for example, the French company that's currently on trial with President Zuma, that company was meant to provide skills upliftment. They were meant to give various initiatives to the communities so that they could justify that huge spend. So from 99 until now, you've seen massive spend on massive projects, but these projects have taken years and years and years to complete. In some instances, they've been completed in an inferior manner. One looks at the Stadia pre-2010 World Cup that was built and the collusion between some of the players there. One sees it playing out in roads, hospitals that have taken years to build. One looks at the power stations, the 2 new power stations that came online, that were years and years and billions of rands over budget. That's because of these symbiotic relationships between corrupt actors, both in government as well as in the private sector.
All right, Chad Thomas, thank you so much for your time. That's Chad Thomas from the IRS Forensic Investigations, giving us an insight there and weighing in on those arrests which were conducted by the Hawks, and this pertaining to tender corruption, particularly at the Mpumalanga Education Department.